Hey guys, I owe you a health update. I've been promising a health update since I went to Brazil to see my rheumatologist, and it's been almost a month. Where do I even start? I don't even know how to start this health update. I don't have anything written down. I don't have any bullet points. I don't have any structure. I don't have anything prepared for this video. So bear with me. I'm going to try to make sense of what's happening and update you guys of what's going on and what the future holds, at least as far as what I know, because honestly, I still don't know much about what the future holds. So if you're new here, my name is Daniela and I live with multiple chronic illnesses, including fibromyalgia, chronic migraines, POTS, and most recently, ankylosing spondylitis. This last diagnosis, the ankylosing spondylitis, has been a hard one to get. It has been much harder to get doctors to listen to me than it was when I got my fibromyalgia diagnosis. Because fibromyalgia is a diagnosis of chronic widespread pain, it was hard to distinguish when I thought there was something more going on. But what made the doctors pause and start believing me and questioning a little bit more was when I had a pretty bad eye inflammation about a year ago called uveitis. And that inflammation was so bad that they thought I was going to lose my vision for good. I lost vision on my right eye for about 3 months, but thankfully it did gradually come back. And I think it took about 6 months for my vision to go back to what it was before. And I am so lucky and so thankful that my vision did go back to what it was before, because the doctors were sure that I was not going to regain my vision. Because I didn't have an infection, no viral infection, no bacterial or fungal or parasite or anything else going on in my eye, they started suspecting I had an autoimmune disorder. And this is how I ended up again at another rheumatologist. I had already seen several rheumatologists in the past for my fibromyalgia, but they pretty much just rule out rheumatoid arthritis and confirm that you have fibromyalgia, and then you're pretty much on your own. They don't really do much about it. This time, they're looking for an autoimmune disorder. So they started to do blood work and some tests. A little bit of context to the story. I live in Canada, and in Canada we have universal healthcare, which is amazing in a sense that we don't have to pay out of pocket for doctors or tests. We do have to pay for medications, but we don't have to pay for anything else. But that comes at a cost, and that cost is waiting. Everything just moves very, very, very slowly, especially in the chronic illness arena. If you have an accident, or if you have a heart attack, or if you have something that you need immediate attention, you will receive immediate attention. But if it's anything else that's more in the chronic arena, you're gonna wait, and you're gonna wait for a long time. And I'm just going to give you an example. I saw my rheumatologist in October of last year, October of 2023, and I am still waiting for an MRI, which is booked for the end of June. So that is a long time to wait for a test. Now, the rheumatologist that I saw was suspecting of this condition called ankylosing spondylitis, which it is an autoimmune disorder that affects primarily the spine, but it can affect other joints of the body. She sent me for some blood work, and she discovered that I was positive for a gene called HLA27. Basically, what it means is that if you are positive for that gene, that you have a higher chance of developing ankylosing spondylitis. This is not a diagnostic test because only a very small percentage of people who are positive for this gene will develop ankylosing spondylitis. I believe it's something between 5 or 8%. But about 95% of people who have ankylosing spondylitis will be positive for that gene. So being positive for that gene is only a piece of the puzzle. The other big piece of the puzzle is the uveitis. So uveitis is a complication of ankylosing spondylitis, and some people that have this disease a little bit more advanced will end up developing uveitis, which can end up in loss of vision. So between the uveitis and being positive for the gene and the chronic symptoms that I had been experiencing, which is very typically of pain being worse in the morning with a lot of stiffness, improving with movement, getting worse at the end of the day, having flares, meaning that you have periods that is worse than others. So all of those things contribute to the suspicion of me having ankylosing spondylitis. So my rheumatologist ordered an MRI to see at what stage of the disease I was, because there are different stages. It's a slow progressing disease for most people, and it may take years and years until it actually shows on an MRI. And depending on what stage of the disease you are, it has a different name. So ankylosing spondylitis actually refers to the disease at a more advanced stage where there is a little bit of fusion of the spine happening, and that is seen on MRIs. And then there is spondyloarthritis, and especially the non-radiographic spondyloarthritis refers to the condition where you cannot see damage on the spine yet. So when I left that rheumatologist appointment, she did prescribe me an anti-inflammatory to take it twice a day, which is one of the medications that is taken for spondyloarthritis or ankylosing spondylitis. And she left me with the requisition to do the MRI. At this point, it was just a waiting game. Initially, the medication did help my pain, but soon after, around December, I got into a pretty bad flare. And I don't know if that was because it was winter coming and the weather was starting to change and that triggered a flare, or if that was just the natural progression of the disease, but I got myself into a pretty severe flare around December. I have vivid memories of our Christmas dinner, sitting at the dinner table and everybody eating and chatting. And I remember just holding back the tears. I was in so much pain, so much pain. I was just sitting at the chair, unable to eat any of my food, trying to not look like I was in so much pain because I didn't want to spoil everybody's Christmas. But I remember that being the lowest point. And after that, I had periods that improved a little bit, but then soon it would go back to how bad it was at Christmas. I was not able to talk to my rheumatologist at all. Most of the times that I called, I got an answer machine. At one point, I managed to reach the secretary, and I remember begging her for an appointment or to have a phone conversation with my rheumatologist if she could call me back or if I could have an appointment. And she kept insisting and saying that she would not see me until I had that MRI done. And I remember just like holding the phone in disbelief. I'm like, I can't believe that you're gonna leave me in this much pain. And she's refusing to see me because I don't have that MRI done, which should not change anything, because even if absolutely nothing showed on that MRI, I already ticked every box to have the spondyloarthritis diagnosis and be treated. So I reached out to my family doctor and I was greeted with the same resistance. She's like, there's nothing I can do for you. You're into the rheumatologist care now. She's the one that has to take care of that. And so I felt like a ping pong ball being thrown from one side of the table to the other, nobody wanting to deal with me. Meanwhile, I'm documenting this journey here on YouTube, and a friend of mine who is from Brazil watched one of my vlogs and reached out to me saying that he had a friend who's a rheumatologist in Brazil, who's a childhood friend of his, and if I wanted, he could get in touch with him. And I was like, absolutely, please. So he put me in touch with this rheumatologist in Brazil. I had a phone virtual consultation with him, and he pretty much confirmed what I already understood of my condition. So I sent him all my tests that I done here in Canada, my blood work. I had done some x-rays and ultrasounds as well, and I sent all that to him. And I also sent him the report from the rheumatologist here, from my last appointment with my rheumatologist here. And he basically told me that I already have a diagnosis of spondyloarthritis, and I also already have indication to start treatment that is beyond anti-inflammatories. He said that a lot of the times anti-inflammatories are not enough to control this disease, and so he recommends that I be on biologic medications, which are anti-TNF medications. Yes, those are the big guns. They have side effects. They suppress your immune system, and that can cause a bunch of issues on its own. But also, not treating ankylosing spondylitis not only has debilitating symptoms for your daily life, but also is a progressive disease that causes permanent damage to your spine, and it can also attack other organs, including the eye, resulting in loss of vision. So that is not something that I want to play with. Now, these biologic medications are extremely expensive, something of $2,000 a month. And so I need my insurance to cover that. I cannot afford those medications. But in order for my insurance to cover, it needs to be prescribed by a Canadian doctor. And so I find myself in the situation where I'm waiting for those MRIs so that my rheumatologist will see me, because she's refusing to see me until I get those MRI done. And I'm in the system, just waiting months and months and months for this MRI. I'm fortunate enough that I was able to get on a plane, fly for 10 hours to Brazil, have a place to stay there, and have someone pay for those tests for me so that I didn't have to wait for months and months and months for my MRI here in Canada. Now, I knew my back pain was bad. I knew I was not imagining, but I didn't expect to see what I saw in my MRI. What they found on that MRI was honestly scary. I'm just gonna pull the report here. So they found reduction in the C4, C5 space, diffuse posterior disc osteophyte complexes from C3 to C4 and C5 to C6, posterior central disc protrusion at C6, C7. Those protrusions can be associated with ankylosing spondylitis, which compress the ventral face of the thecal sac. Foraminal stenosis of the right at C3 and C4, bilateral at C4 and C5, and right at C5, C6, and C6, C7. So the conclusion for that section, which is the cervical, is discopathy in the cervical segment, incipient degenerative intrafovefacial foraminal stenosis with radicular, I don't know how to say that stuff, involvement. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering all of the words, but yeah, it's a lot. Now for the thoracic part, interior wedging of the vertebral bodies from T1 to T8, reduction of intervertebral spaces, disc protrusions at thoracic levels, compressing the ventral aspect of the thecal sac. So again, compressing the spinal cord, compressing the nerves, disc dehydration with reduction of L5 to S1 space, degenerative arthropathy at L3, L4, and L4 and L5, protruded postural central disc herniation at L5 and S1, compressing the ventral aspect of the thecal sac. So basically, I have compression of my spinal cord on my cervical, thoracic, and lumbar area. And it says specifically the S1 roots. Foraminal narrowing at L4, L5, and L5, S1 with apparent radicular compression. So lots of compression of nerves in my lower back. So basically that means degenerative arthropathy, discopathy, and yeah, nerve compression. That was a lot. I had to look up a lot of those words. I'm not gonna go into every single detail and what it means. So it basically means that I have arthrosis, which is, I think, like an arthritis that is not autoimmune. I have degenerative disc disorder. I have narrowing of some of the spaces where the nerve roots come out. And I have bony growth. The only two things that could be related to ankylosing spondylitis is the bony growth, because what happens is where there is a lot of inflammation, the body responds with kind of building more bone on the area, and that's how you end up with the spine fused, because there's so much inflammation in the area, and then the body just sort of reacts by trying to reinforce that structure, and so it creates bone and then it fuses the bones. So I already have bone growth. I was not expecting to see that. All the rest is something else, is a different issue. And so now not only I have ankylosing spondylitis, or rather spondyloarthritis, because there's no fusion of the spine, but I also have degenerative disc disorder, disc herniation, compression of the nerves, and I don't know, a bunch of other stuff that I don't even understand. And I have tried to get those results to my rheumatologist here, because that was the whole point of going to Brazil and doing those tests there, was to bypass that wait time, and that she could look at all of these results and then decide what's the best treatment for that. So basically cutting that waiting time. And because I can't get a hold of my rheumatologist, I went to my family doctor with all of these results, hoping that she would be that bridge, that she would be my advocate to get those results to my rheumatologist so that I could see her sooner. And when I talked about being prescribed the anti-TNF drugs, the biologics, they said that they want my ophthalmologist who treated me for the uveitis to approve or to agree that I should be on those drugs. And so now they're throwing me onto the ophthalmologist court, saying that I need to see him first before they can even consider the anti-TNF. But then now guess what happened? Yes, you're right. I can't get an appointment with my ophthalmologist until July. So now I'm waiting until July to see my ophthalmologist to see what he has to say about those drugs and the uveitis. And so now I am being pushed around between my family doctor, the rheumatologist, the ophthalmologist, and everything. There is a wait time of at least 2 months. So am I any further than I was before I flew all the way to Brazil to get a bunch of expensive MRI done? Not really. Not really. But what I did get was more understanding of what's going on. My rheumatologist here was only going to order an MRI of the SI joint. I told her over and over and over in how much pain I was on my upper back as well. And she said that they only do the upper back MRI if it shows significant damage to the SI joint. If nothing shows on the SI joint, then they won't even order the MRI for the upper back. And I knew that something was wrong. I knew that it was not possible to be in so much pain unless something was really wrong. And I know that you can be in a lot of pain with fibromyalgia. But I also knew that my pain had changed. It had become different. And I knew that something was different. I knew that there was more going on than just fibromyalgia. Does that mean that I don't have fibromyalgia? That what I had all along was disc disorder and spondyloarthritis? No. I do have fibromyalgia because I have all the other issues that fibromyalgia have that those conditions don't have. I have the burning on the skin. I have the sensitivity to sound, sensitivity to smell, sensitivity to light. I have like the sharp like needles. I have the widespread like flu-like symptoms, feeling like you have a fever when you don't really. And none of those things are directly related to disc disease or spondyloarthritis. So I know I still have fibromyalgia, but now I have knowledge that I also have those other diseases. And what that knowledge does is maybe change the approach that I take, how I go about managing it. It may involve more physiotherapy. It may involve different medications. It means that I have to be more careful with the kind of exercise that I do, but also that I become more diligent in maintaining physical activity, in pushing myself to move my body more, because it is extremely important to keep all those joints moving. The other thing that I did in Brazil as well was an ultrasound of my shoulders, both my shoulders, and the left shoulder is the one that is bothering me the most right now. And they did find quite a bit of inflammation in that shoulder. They call it bursitis. And that is also related to spondyloarthritis. You start getting inflammations on your knees and your hips and your shoulders and your wrist and your hands. They found fluid in my hands, on my joints, and they found the inflammation in the shoulder. So there is more knowledge, there is more understanding of what's going on. It is very validating for the very first time in my life to actually have proof of what I'm feeling, because the curse of fibromyalgia is to experience all the symptoms, all the pain, like if there is real damage done, but then you can't see any of the damage. And then you start second guessing yourself. You start questioning your own sanity. And for the first time in my life, I have proof of the pain I'm feeling. And that is extremely validating, but also extremely scary, because there is real damage done, and damage that cannot be undone. So the hope that I'm going to get better, it's kind of gone, because with fibromyalgia, there is always that hope that someday I was going to heal. Someday I was going to conquer that disease. But now when you have physical structural damage, you know, like your bones compressing your spine, and other than surgery, there isn't much fixing of it. There's physio that you can do, there's stretches, there's things that you can do to help manage, but there's no undoing the damage that is done. It's just very scary. All of this is all very scary. It took me a while to sit down to do this video because, one, it's a very boring video. There is no way to make this dynamic. I don't have the energy to make this dynamic. But I really wanted to share what was going on because you guys have been following me. I've been doing vlogs and you knew I had gone to Brazil, and I hadn't explained what had happened in Brazil. Partially because I was still digesting all that information. I was still processing all that information. I've also been in denial. I've been not wanting to think about it. I've just kind of put it on the back burner and, you know, just trying to kind of distract myself with other things, because it just reached a point where it was just so overwhelming. And I was just hitting walls one after the other. And I was getting so frustrated that I had to get out of the wheel, you know, the spinning wheel. I had to get off. I had to pause. I had to hit the brakes. And that's what I've been doing. I've been doing a little bit of traveling. I went to visit my son in Thunder Bay. We did some hikes there. Before that, I went camping. I've been looking for solace in nature and distract myself. But a lot of you have been asking me, like, did I miss the vlog where you know, explain what's going on? And I'm like, no, you haven't. I just haven't done it yet. So I decided to sit down today and film this little health update. I hope it wasn't too boring. If you stayed all the way to the end of this video, wow, you are a true supporter. Put a heart in the comments so I know how many people actually made it all the way to the end, because when I look at the number of views that a video had, I have no idea if someone watched 1 minute, 30 seconds, or all the way to the end. The YouTube just gives you the average view duration, which is the average between people who watched all the way to the end and those that only watched for 30 seconds. So it's hard to know how many people actually watched all the way to the end. So I'd be curious to know. So if you are one of those hardcore supporters of my channel, drop a heart below in the comments. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being so patient with me waiting for this health update. And I will keep you guys updated in a more informal way through my vlogs, just following my journey on my day-to-day. So again, thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.